the Level Up and Live podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights to help you unlock your full potential and live your best life. I'm your host, Sean Myers, joined by my co-host, Yoon Heinemeier. And today, we have a very special guest joining us in the virtual studio. Today, we're thrilled to welcome the one and only Jeff Forrester. Jeff's journey is one of transformation and empowerment. His passion for helping others reach their full potential is truly infectious. In 2020, Jeff decided to share his wisdom with the world by writing his first book, Unleashed Potential: Simple Steps to Be the Best Version of Yourself. Throughout this episode, Jeff shares invaluable lessons from his own life experiences, offering practical advice and insights that will resonate with anyone striving for personal growth and development. From his youth to his professional career, Jeff's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, self-discovery, and continuous improvement. Whether you're a parent, a professional, or simply someone looking to level up your life, Jeff's guidance will leave you feeling inspired and motivated to take action towards becoming the best version of yourself. Without further ado, meet Jeff Forrester.
Man, Jeff Forrester, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on. We're so excited about this one. You've mentioned multiple words that just automatically get me excited, which is coaching, athletes, helping young people, and helping people see and become best version of themselves. We just discussed that before. That's actually one of your, when I was doing some research on it, I was like, it said in the bio, like helping people become the best version of themselves. And I'm like, that's exactly what we do. And that's one of our missions, our goal. So it was just a perfect fit for the hand going into the glove with this episode. So, and saying all that, if you could give us a detailed version of that, man, I know the audience would love to hear it.
Sure, fellas. Thank you for inviting me on and being able to share some things with your audience. So for me, to give you a brief breakdown of who I am, I'm a Christian and I'm a father and a husband. Not in that order, Christian, husband, father. I've been married to my wife, Tammy, for 18 years, and she's unbelievable and supportive. And I know you guys talk about entrepreneurship, is that without her, none of this to where I'm at today would have happened. She's had more faith in me than I've had in myself. So I just have to launch off by just giving her kudos and just saying, when I wanted to quit, she told me no, because we had both agreed to a time frame that we were going to stick this thing out. So thankfully for her, I'm still here. I have a son who's 15. He's an accomplished offensive lineman, sophomore in high school. It's like having a grown man in the house. I have a 13-year-old daughter. It's like having an adult daughter. She's a club volleyball player. So our life is absolutely consumed with sports and travel, and we wouldn't have it any other way. You know, a lot of people kind of look at us and think we're crazy, but my wife sent me a reel just the other day talking about how people just don't understand that we invest 100% in these humans that are in our house that are doing something that they love. Neither of which did we push to go into athletics. They found the sport that they wanted to, and then our job is to support, challenge, and encourage them along the way. And so from that, I've learned, and I'm learning how to transfer that to other people's children and their student athletes. So I'm a coach of teens and young adults, specifically with student athletes, a co-founder of Highlight Coaching and Consulting, where we focus 100% of our effort with sixth graders up to age 35, because that's still a young adult when you look at how old I am. But it's just helping them answer the critical three questions that we all have in our life. And that's, who am I? Where am I going? And how am I going to get there? And so we do all that through self-discovery, because, you know, we all look for that best version of ourselves. And like you say in your description of your show, that there's one catch: no one can take action for you. You have to be the one to take it, even if it's with trembling knees. And so what we want to do is we want to be that coach and that supportive structure around these young people, that when their knees are trembling, they can step into that challenge, that adventure, that their pathway to greatness, to see, okay, what do I need to do? I don't even know where to start. And we want to be the people that help them find the place to start, and then develop those critical thinking skills that we've all had to figure out over the course of our lives, that they can get a jump start on where they can find success quicker.
Mm.
That was a lot,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I love that. Sean, you first.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm curious on how you got into, what'd you do before coaching and how did you get into coaching?
Yeah, great question. And I'll be brief on this one. So I spent the last 22 years prior to 2021 in pharmaceuticals and healthcare sales, where I was in leadership, sales, training, marketing, just about every role within that industry. And in 2021, I was laid off for the final time, and I was just over it. I'd written this book, Unleash Potential, in 2020. I love helping people. That was one of the biggest parts of my career that I enjoyed, and that was in the training department. And then when I was in leadership, just to see other people excel and succeed and walk across the stage. I don't care if I walk across the stage, I get more thrill and enjoyment and adrenaline rush when I see other people that I've worked with to help them find something that they didn't think was within them. And so from that, just was laid off. I'm a sole breadwinner, just was trying to decide, what do I do? And, you think, well, everybody says to be a coach and a consultant. And that's what you see on social media. And I was like, okay, maybe that's what I want to do. And so I just had a lot of prayer about it. I had another W-2 job lined up. It would have been sweet. I'm telling you, fellas, it would have been a good one. It would have paid a ton of money, required not a whole lot of work on my part, would have given me a lot of free time, but I did not want to do it at all. Like I had nothing in me that wanted me to go. And so just through prayer, I was just looking for, which path do I take? Do I try to do this consulting thing, or do I go and get this W-2 job that I'm just know that I can do with my eyes closed? It's going to require some work, but not anything that would be too daring on my part. And I just heard which path requires more faith for God to provide. And I was like, well, that's easy. It's definitely not the W-2 job. And so, like I said before, as I just went to my wife and I told her, I was like, this is what I heard. This is what I feel that I should do, but we have to at least give it a year. And so she was fully supportive of that. And what I've been able to do as I've ventured into this is using the 22 years of corporate experience, corporate training, and all this formalized process, that I can bring that at a level that anybody can understand, and specifically student athletes, teens, and young adults. Of It's not rocket science, but it's just, if you don't know it and you don't know a structure and a process, it's hard to follow. And what we do at Highlight is, Jessica, the founder, Jessica Villegas, she also came from the corporate world and utilized a lot of the things that in developing the programs that we have from her corporate experience, is that it just gives you a flow. And it's not that you have to follow this system, because I know you guys talk about it in your show notes, is that not every system works for everybody. What we want to do is give them areas to look at, and then build the confidence and the knowledge for them to understand what structure works best for them. And I took that from my corporate world of having success with sales teams, of not leading them in a way that, okay, this is the new sales training model that we have this week. It's, okay, looking at that sales model, how can you use that best fits your personality and best fits a way that you're actually going to use some of it. And that's where I feel that, and it seems like that you guys are completely aligned with this as well, is the more that we can empower people to think boldly on their own and start to trust their decisions, the more they're going to take risk and adventures and keep moving forward. Because I'm not a risk taker, but I had to start doing little things that allowed me to believe in myself, that, you know what, that didn't go as bad as I had thought. It didn't go anywhere that I had imagined. It actually turned out better.
Man, you are speaking like it's like a secret what you just said that leaders do not know about. It's like leader wants result, and to get result, I need people to do this for me, and I will tell them how to do it. And it's a squeeze, a control factor, right? What you just said there is polar opposite of that, which is giving people freedom, to empowerment to make their own choices, right? Because you can't, no matter how much they want to get a result, you can't squeeze and get it. It will not. People will break, or you'll crush them. As opposed to letting them be empowered to do it themselves, you get a result that you just didn't think was possible. But it takes a lot of courage, right? It takes a lot of. It's very scary to let go of control, to let people be the best, like to do their thing. And did you learn that in the corporate world in sales and watching people respond, or how did you pick that up?
I feel that it was a natural gift. I've always been a learner. So my mom and dad growing up, I was born in the 70s, early 70s, and my mom and dad were into network marketing then. So they listened to a lot of motivational, inspirational speakers. And as a weird young child, I just listened to cassette tapes over and over of like Zig Ziglar, Skip Ross, like all these names that it's just nothing but positivity. And from that, it must have just sunk in a little bit. But I'm also, if you follow a disc profile, I'm an SC, so I'm a peacemaker. So I like to see other people succeed to a fault, in the sense that I'm so humble and try to take a back seat so much that I don't allow my voice to be heard, even when I have a good idea. So it goes both ways, where I would push on more people so much, because then that took a lot of the responsibility off of me. What I've learned is when I have the most anxiety is when I set the worst expectations up front. And when I would have problems with having a corporate conversation with someone on my team that needed discipline, or they weren't um, delivering the results that they should have, and I realized that I had so much anxiety, I would play back and go, well, that's because I set up really poor expectations. If you set up clear expectations, there shouldn't be any emotion in the follow-up and holding them accountable. One, they should be coming to you. If you've properly empowered them, they should feel this level of commitment and accountability of like, Jeff, hey, look, I know we talked about this, that I would have these results in 6 weeks. I'm not having them, and here are some of the problems that I have. So now we can collaborate and work. So with young people, as parents, we don't do that. We say, do it this way. And then we get mad if they don't do it the way we think that they should be doing it. But we're poor in setting up expectations. I use an example in my book about clean your room. And I remember my son was 8 years old, and my wife and I just kept hollering at him for cleaning his room. And we'd go up there and like, you called this clean? This isn't clean. And then we'd have to sit there and do it. Well, he's in confusion because his version of clean and our version of clean clearly have two different definitions. And so what we decided to do, and this isn't unique to me, I heard about this and I used it. So this is where that taking action plays that you guys talk so much about, is that you can learn things, but you got to put it into play and see if it works. So I went up there and he and I cleaned the room together. We took time. I took time out of my day to work on it together. And then we both stood back at the door and we looked at the room. I said, okay, what do you see, buddy? He's like, my room's clean. I was like, okay, this is my definition of clean. Now, what happens for you? What would be a repercussion if it's not clean? He's like, well, I guess I can't play Xbox. I was like, okay, done. So then I could clearly downstairs, if he was upstairs wanting to play or asking to play, then my question was, well, how does your room look? And if there's a hesitation, I was like, yes or no question, good or bad. And so he would say, well, I think it's clean. I was like, well, is it as clean that we had agreed upon? And then that's when he's like, no. And then he'd fix it. And then I'd go inspect it. And then off he would go. And there were no tears. I wasn't frustrated. And so now he's 15. We can have the same level of conversation because we set expectation. My daughter's a different story, but
I'm curious, Jeff, on with you said what was the age? Because before the podcast, before we started shooting the episode, you said it was 15 to 35 is who you were trying to coach or who you were coaching.
yeah,
correct?
sixth grade is really the bottom end that of age that we see, and it depends on the maturity level of the young person. They can grasp a lot of things. They're gonna receive some benefit. The challenge of a sixth grader many times is just the maturity level of how do I absorb answering who am I? Like what is your future self? But you can still build a lot of those fundamental skills that they need to plan everything out.
So it sounds like you've got a program and a curriculum, right? Something to put together for these individuals. My biggest question is, one of the things I've learned with business and people that are listening to this is that I have learned over the years is find out how do you serve and impact more people? Well, find out what their struggle is. Find out what your target audience, what your avatar's struggle is. So I'm curious with you is what is the number one struggle that your clients and the ones you're coaching, what's their biggest struggle that they're dealing with? And how are you helping to overcome that?
Sure, great question. So with coaching young people, there's a bit of a challenge. We have two clients. So we have the parent and we have the young person. So usually I have not found many instances where they're both in complete alignment. Usually there's a parent expectation of where they think their child should be, regardless of the age. And then you have the child's perception of where they think that they're at. So once you get both to agree that, okay, highlight is something that I want to do, I want to go through this program, I want my young person to go through this program. So a lot of times you'll have the parent eager because they're just at wit's end. Like, I see so much potential in my child. I wanted them to do more. I see them struggling, and then they don't seem to be, interacting socially. They're procrastinating. They're doing all the things that we've all been challenged with. But then when you talk to the young person, they seem fine. And they're like, I don't know, my mom just wants me to do this, or I guess. So you have to have buy-in on both sides to make this really work. So the biggest question that you asked was, it's who am I? And that's what we all struggle with. And we work with a gentleman who's did a lot of surveys of tens of thousands of young people over the course of years. And the three main questions, which aligned to us because we wanted to double check and make sure we weren't off, was who am I? Where am I going? And how am I going to get there? And I think those are existentially the questions that we all ask ourselves. For me, like we talked about in 2021, I'm trying to figure out who am I? Where am I going to go? And how am I going to get there? How do I live this life that I want to live? So with young people, it's just asking them questions and challenging them to think at a level that they've never done before, because it's in them. They know what they want. You just have to allow them the space to answer without judgment. And so one of the things that I try to do, good or bad, right when I start working with them, is I want to shock them in a sense that I'm going to be like the fun uncle. Is that I'm not the parent. I tell them I'm not your parent. I'm not a counselor, and I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained to be one. I'm not licensed to be one, and I don't want to be one. I'm a success coach. I want to help you from this day forward, create a system and a plan that works for you to accomplish the things you want to accomplish in the time frame you want to accomplish them in. So then we go into the process of just asking a lot of these critical thinking questions of, what is your future self? Like, what do you want? And I'm not here to squash their desires. So whatever they say, then we go into the tactical part. And the thing that I like to do to shock them with is like, I don't care if you do your homework. And they look, because no adult ever tells a young person that they don't care if they do their homework. I do care because I know that there's benefits in doing it, but I want them to understand is that I'm not here to tell you you need to do your homework. I want to teach you the valuable skills of time management, distraction management, task management, where you see with your goals how to incorporate homework, how to incorporate fun with your friends, how to incorporate your sports activities that you may want to do. All of these things are able to be accomplished in a day because everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. It's how you use them. And then getting them to audit their time. So there's a lot of things that we do that helps them come to some realization of, oh yeah, this is what I need. So working with student athletes, I would say 90% of them all want to be a professional, whatever sport that they're in. Some don't, and that's fine. And so it's like, okay, and I don't care if their dreams the NBA and they're 16 years old and they're 5'5", 120 pounds. I don't care. I love that they have this huge dream. And so I just share, it's like, okay, it's going to be a lot of work. Now, what do you need to do? And then teach them to walk through that, because whatever goal that they have in life, if they can follow that fundamental principle of backwards engineer from your goal to the smaller goals to accomplish that goal, and then the tactics needing to accomplish each small goal will fill that big goal, because the goal doesn't have to change, but your tactics may. And
Yeah.
then getting them to admit, it's like, and usually when they're athletes, they're talking about all the athletic things and the training that they have to do. So then it's like, well, where's school in this whole thing? And then getting them to realize, yep, I got to have my grades. And then we go through grades. I'm like, okay, where's nutrition in all this? Where's sleep in all this? And if they're like, well, I sleep enough, and then I go, okay, well, let's audit your day. You may, I don't know. Let's just break it down and just peeling the layer back, and you see this receptivity of young people because they're now being heard. That's all we wanted to be when we were young. Like, don't forget, like, use empathy. And good coaches use a lot of empathy to not think that they're any different than the person that they're sitting in front of, and say, okay, I can relate. I wasn't exactly in the same situation you're in now, but that's what, for me, that's what I can do. One of the critical things, and I'll ask you guys, is we ask young people. So let's say it's a ninth grader, or we'll say ninth grade. Say, okay, for an incoming middle schooler going into sixth grade, what 3 pieces of advice would you give yourself? And then they have to think through that. And then we say, okay, you're graduating high school now. You just walked across the stage. What 3 questions do you want to ask yourself after you've graduated? And then they go through that process. And then we look them in the eye and say, okay, how are you showing up today to take your own advice? And then how are you showing up today to answer the questions that you're going to ask yourself the way you want to answer them? Because a lot of them is like, well, did my music get published? Did I did I get a scholarship? Did I do that? Okay, well, how are you living today to answer that yes? So for like you guys, when you first started, and I know this would benefit the audience, what 3 pieces of advice would you give yourself 5 years ago?
That's a great question.
My first one would be definitely, and I was going to ask you this question earlier, but find a mentor, seek a coach. That's my number one advice: is surround yourself, right? Whether that could be, because when somebody thinks of mentor or coach, I got to pay, right? And so if you're somebody starting out, right, if I'm thinking student athletes, then lean forward, right? And so if I told my younger self this, because you have to a certain degree, if in order to find a mentor, right, and have that person in your life. And I know for myself, because I'm a mentor, the people that lean in, I'm like, yes, I'll help you, right? And so that's one way to do it. Podcast, books. So man, I wish I would have read books, at an early age. That's probably my second one, because you're learning from the greats, the bios and the saying that right? The biography, yeah, from all the greats, right? Napoleon Hill, and just studying what they did and just understanding the actions that they took, how they thought, their ideas. So books, mentors, coaches, and then not being afraid to fail, right? So many times people are afraid to fail and fail forward. I was a baseball player, Jeff, so that it just over the years, this was embedded in me. You go up to bat maybe 10 times in a game, and I'm only getting a hit 3 to 4 times, if that. And so I'm failing the 6 or 7 other times. So that taught me over time, I was just failing forward. So I think those 3 things are my biggest piece of advice.
Man, mine, I have 2 kids. They're second and fourth grade. And I'm asking myself, what am I telling them? Because that's what I would have told myself. And really, I talk a lot about asking questions, getting to understand other people's perspectives. That's probably I don't even know if I have a third, but if good questions, you don't have to have a lot of answers because other people have them, and getting to know people, letting them feel. Not many people get to talk. Normally people are talking or want to talk. Everyone's raising their hand to say, I got something to say. Which means everybody's got something to say, and no one's hand is going down to listen. And all the people want with their hands up is someone to listen to them. So being that person makes you very influential, very powerful. You don't even have to say much, and people will love you. They'll gravitate towards you, and they respect you, love you. So those are probably 2 things there. And yeah, not being afraid to fail would probably be my third, just because I it's sadistic, but whatever I don't want to do, I gravitate towards like getting myself in situations that I really don't want to be in, so that I can take them on. I don't want to be afraid of anything, because I don't want to live my life in fear. So those would probably be the three things I would say.
No, and thank you for sharing those. And I know that your listeners will appreciate it. And the last one about taking risk, that's one of mine as well. And I'm sure that people look at you as entrepreneurs that took risks. And here you are saying, take more risks, is that we have to believe and lean into that and understand. I'm preaching to myself now, is that risks that we take aren't life threatening. They're not going to potentially put our family on, the street. And that's when we took that leap of faith to not me going back, and that was terrible grammar, not going back and getting a full-time job, because we looked at the preparation that we had made to get to this point to where, yes, it was risky, it was scary, but it didn't alter our lifestyle to the point where we had to worry, okay, are we going to go hungry today? Are we potentially going to lose the house tomorrow? And so we've never had that. So a lot of my fear has just been fear that has welled up. And one of the things that I think is interesting that I like to bring is perspective. And for me, faith is so important. Is I kept praying for God to provide, praying, please provide. Well, I was thinking forward. I was thinking, I want a client, I want this, I want that, I want things to come my way. And I was out walking the dog one day. And so this is the perspective I want people to really listen to, is it just overwhelmed me with the idea of he had been preparing and I've been prepared and he had been providing for the last 22 years of my career. So the provision I was looking for had been there all along. I just had this nest egg and this thing that I thought I'm supposed to use when I hit 67 or 70, which I'm 51. So that's another 20 years in front of me that I think that I can't use this provision that's here. I'd rather it just go to waste than take advantage of it and invest in myself, invest in my family. So if you're looking for provision, you're looking for a risk, don't forget to look behind you of all the things that you've acquired over the years. They're going to help you make that leap little less scary than you think that it may be.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Love that. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was all consumed. So one of the things I've learned recently, and when I started my first business in 2015, I was all consumed, right? And what I mean by that is, so now I've learned over time, there's all in and there's all consumed. A lot of people listening to this may be all consumed. And when you're all consumed, in my mind, and what I've learned is that I'm just 24/7 just thinking about this one thing, this second thing, building a business, building my coaching clients, marketing, advertising. So I'm all consumed. So in other words, when I'm with my kid or with my family, when I'm doing on a podcast, talking to Jeff, whatever it may be, if I'm all consumed, then that means I'm not here in the now. I'm not present because I'm all consumed, right? With what that one or two different things is. And so now I'm like, I'm all in. If I'm talking to Jeff, I'm all in talking to Jeff. If I'm on date night with my wife on a Wednesday at 4:00, I'm all in here. The phone's over here on the side on a do not disturb. And so my point here is with your coaching clients and these student athletes, they have so much going on in their lives, right? As far as like hearing it from their friends, the society, and they're in that stage where, it's almost like a mold. Like you can mold them in this direction, going down the road most traveled or less traveled. So I'm curious, with all these distractions, all this noise, knowing all consumed and all in, do you have these conversations with the coaching clients? And how does, if so, like, do they resonate with people the coaching clients in their 20s and 30s, as far as understanding? Because it's harder than it sounds, right? And so it's taken me years to understand this, and every chance I get and I talk to somebody and I get to share that voice and preach that, I'm like, man, once you understand like the all in versus the all consumed, that's when you can really master your craft and hone in on what it is that you're really good at. And if that's sports, podcasting, whatever it may be, because you're not all consumed, because it's only a matter of time before you're a ticking time bomb, before you're like, dude, this has consumed my life, right? And that could be sports. That could be, you had said it earlier, the kids wanting to go and be professionals. If they're all consumed and that's all they're thinking about, they're going to look back 5, 8 years from now, 10 years from now and go, what happened to my life? Because they're all consumed and they weren't all in. Does that make sense? Do you resonate with that?
Total sense. So for me, I lived that for 22 years of my corporate career, that there was nothing that stood in the way. That came before everything, to the point where I almost lost everything because that was so important. And the people that are, with me and behind me and support me were the ones that I took for granted. And so a great lesson is, if you're trying to decide if you're all consumed or all in, are you taking the people around you for granted? And if you are, then you're all consumed, and watch out. It's going to come back. And social media and books and all these people tell you got to grind. Everybody, this is my season to grind. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. You're going to lose it all. Because to me, that's materialistically focused or selfish. And there's times that you can be selfless that looks like being selfish. But if you're ignoring your primary duty as a husband and a father, a mother and a wife, then you're all consumed. All in means and you said it perfectly and described it perfectly in my eyes, is that I'm here with you now, and you're going to feel, and you said it also earlier about listening. I'm listening to hear you and to understand, not listening to respond. If you're in that all consuming space, you're looking to respond. So with student athletes, it's an identity crisis. It's a separation of, I'm me, I'm Jeff who plays football. I'm not a football player. And so many people, including corporate America and each individual person, is they align to an identity. And then when that's taken away, they have no idea how to respond, because everything else took a back seat. There was no plan B. Well, there needs to be a plan B. And that's where being all in is very supportive. So that's where we help them understand through the process. And part of that is when they set goals. And let's say you want to be an NBA player, NFL player, pro tennis, whatever it may be, corporate tycoon, that there are going to have to be sacrifices made. But I like to call it's a negotiation with the other people. It's like, hey, I really need to do this. And so know that I may miss a couple of things here and there, but it's not my intention to miss it. It's also priorities. And if you prioritize the right things, everything else will still happen. If it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen. And you can prioritize your friends, you can prioritize your loved ones, and still grind, get your training in, get the practice in, get your work in. You just may have to sacrifice some Xbox time. So what are you willing to give up to accomplish your dreams and still be all in? And I'm going to steal that, because I really do like the way you can really delineate between the two.
Yeah, it's I think people are afraid to not grind because they don't know another version of it, especially if you've been on your own your whole life, right? And then you get married, and then now there's two of you. So you've not really experienced what it's like to have what you want and love someone at the same time. If you have kids, so you've just made it even deeper as far as how you have to look at that. So people point to a lot of guys and they'll say they're hard on themselves, really hard. Like they'll beat themselves up because they think it gives them that edge to keep pushing hard, when there's another version of themselves not doing that to themselves, and they could excel even more, but they don't know that's available. And so I think it's the same thing with people are all consumed on business or sports, because that's going to get them that success, and then they'll be loved by everybody, that because they want love at the end of the day. And they don't realize if they loved first and put those things as priority, they'd have all the glory and more, or not even care about it as much, which is they're just not aware that it's available yet. I know for me, I mean, it used to be all about winning, achieving, and that is just totally dissipated. My kids and my wife, top priority. God is number one. My wife and kids that's my job as father, husband, that's the number one job. Everything else revolves around that. So, but that gives me passion to go do what it is that I want to do, which I didn't have before. It was miserable before. that was just grinding, like you said. And yeah, so it's interesting to know, or to hear someone else say there's another version of doing that in a positive, healthy way. But, and question for you, Jeff, we were talking about it before the podcast. I have to know, it's been on my mind. So you've been in business since 2021 or 2020, and you said, but just the last 3 months, it started to explode. The momentum, you said. And I was like, okay, I know in business to be good, 18 to 36 months, you might start seeing some results around about that time, because all the effort you had to put in. And I'm curious, is it because of that, you've been in business long enough to where you're now everybody is getting to know what it is that you offer? Or is it, did you tweak or change something? Or where's that momentum coming from in your business?
Yeah, great question. And I'm still looking for the true answer, but because I'm a data guy, I do though feel that it was really redefining my message and my audience. And I know that you guys are firm believers of this as well. And so when I first started working with Highlight, was it was teens and young adults, and that's such a huge blue ocean. It's just massive. People may think that's niching down because they're like, well, who coaches teens and young adults? That's a really cool niche, which it is. There's a lot of teens and young adults that are out there. And for me, having the children that I have that are so involved in sports and we're around it all the time. And I was an athlete, not a great one, but I was an athlete when I was younger, and I like to train, I like to run. So I just like that lifestyle, that I found myself wanting to talk to more athletes, but I had not put my flag down of this is who my client is, and did a lot of searching, a lot of prayer around it. And it just came to this fruition where the beginning of the year, I'm like, this is my message. This is I'll definitely help any teen and young adult that comes my way that, raises their hand for help. My client, my particular avatar are student athletes, because I understand them. I can relate to them. I have two of them. I was one. And once I did that, then my message, I believe, became more clear for people that are looking to start to receive and hear. Because if you're just trying to message to everybody, you end up helping nobody. And
Mhm.
that's what's tough. And I fought that for a long time because I was such a believer in my message can help everybody, and it can, but you have to narrow your focus to that point of being able to understand what is your target. And a good
Mhm.
analogy is, I got to go down to Argentina and hunt doves, and the number of doves in the sky, it's like it's black. And so you would think, in theory, that when you have hundreds upon hundreds of doves right above you and you're shooting a shotgun, you just got to shoot them up amongst them and you're going to get one of them. Wrong. The first thing that they teach you is you have to find one, follow it, otherwise you miss them all. And it is 100% true. And it's that looking at one far away and staying laser focused until it comes into range. And so I feel like that within business is we have to know what we're going for, and we have to be patient, and we've got to be, diligent and have a keen eye. I'm going to watch that all the way in until it's ready. And so for me, it just took time. So I do feel and understand that, over the years I was, planting seeds and cultivating and building relationships that I didn't even think were necessarily going to help my business. Now, all of a sudden, it's helping my business because it was just a genuine way. A lot of it came out of me wanting to help the trainers use the corporate knowledge that I had of building their business and transferring that over to them. And then now, without asking for anything, and now I'm seeing synergies in ways that they want to see me succeed and how they want to help me, giving me access to their email list and to their clients to be able to share the message because I've provided value and they trust me. They know what I'm about. They know who I am, that because I wasn't trying to do, some sort of a business deal or anything. It was just me trying to build a friendship and wanting to help people in a genuine way.
That sounds like to me unanswered prayer. Like, when you hear that kind of connection, there's some things that just happen, probably not, but there's some things you're like, that sounds like that, like you asked God and he was like touched. He put his
Yeah.
finger on it and said, I'm gonna make that happen, because that sounds awesome. How that, like, those relationships out of nowhere, or not out of nowhere, but just the synergy that you didn't know that had been working this whole time is that's super cool to hear that. But
Yeah, he was
Sean,
waiting for me to get out of the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
as always.
Yeah.
One of the things that I keep hearing you say, student athletes, and I resonate because I was a student athlete. I played high school, played college baseball, and man, it would have just knowing like what I know now, having somebody like you in my life would have been a game changer, right? And so, and and somebody would argue, right, in their teens or even in their 20s and 30s or maybe older, they would say, well, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't in the right season, right? And so do you find that with your student athletes? Because we're all in different seasons of our life. And I'm trying to reflect back when I was a student athlete, if I would have had somebody like you in my life, would have I have listened to you, or it would have been in one ear and out the other? Because like I said earlier on the podcast, typically a mentor, a coach is not going to solicit their time, energy, or effort to somebody that doesn't want to lean in, right? So I'm curious with you, is it certain individuals that lean in because of their parents, or is it, or do you flip the script, and when you have the conversation, you start there and go, this is why it's important to have these conversations now. Who am I? Because if I'm asking that question at 16, 17, 18 years of age, maybe I do now what, 10 years ago. Does that make sense?
hmm So it's like twofold. So part of it is going back to your podcast description. Trust me, I'm no stranger to being scared, nervous, and fearful of being judged. I too have thought, what if? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? Sound familiar? You are not alone. That's what prevents most people from hiring a coach, because they feel like that they've failed and they can't do it on their own. Well, newsflash, none of us can do it on our own. We
Yeah.
need support and people
Amen.
around us. The other part to that is, and then I'll get to the final client question, is, there's a saying that it's amazing how smart our parents every year that we get older, because the older you get, you start to realize the wisdom that your parents were trying to share with you, but we were just so resistant. So it goes back to the fun uncle part. So there's two different types of clients. So there's the one that leans in. It's like, mom, dad, I need somebody like Jeff to help me. I've got a few areas that, and those are the high performers. Those are
Yeah.
the ones that are just dynamite. They want anything, any resource, bring it. I'll hire every coach, whatever. Those are the ones you love to work with, because you just have like, well, you kind of do, because they only need like one or two sessions, and then they're like, I'm good, I'm done. And they are, and they're just ready to rock and roll. And then you
Yeah.
have the ones that I would say at the bottom of the bell curve that just fight, fight, fight. And usually those are the ones that just don't, they're so resistant for whatever reason. They probably need a counselor or a therapist to deal with some of the things that they need. I like the middle. I like the bell curve. So there's more in the middle. The middle are the ones that come fight for the first 2 or 3 sessions. They're just a little skeptical, not really sure, but they know that needs something, but I don't know if this thing's going to really work. And then you start seeing the wheels turn, because I'm not trying to convince them to work with me. I'm trying to share value to the point where they want to come back. And the more you get of those, by the time you get to 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions, you see them leaning in, you see them committed. I had a conversation with a mom just the other day. And I said, so tell me, how do you think that it's going? I know that's a terrible question, but I just was like, what kind of things are you seeing at home? And the answer was, well, he's not fighting to come see you. So that's a win. And knowing the young man, that really is a win, because there's a lot of sarcasm, a lot of just walls that he has put up for one reason or the other. But through building trust and building, value that he sees, because I'm letting him run the show and I answer
Yeah.
his questions, that he sees the sense of empowerment to the point where you see him being more open and energetic when he comes to the session. And those are the things that I like to see, because if we can change the 80%, that's what's going to make the shift in this world. And it was just like in sales, the good ones are going to be the good ones no matter what I do. The bad ones are going to be the bad ones no matter what I do. But if I can shift these people in the middle and start to move them over, I'm going to have massive implications on my revenue. So if we're looking for positivity and success revenue in young people, let's focus on the 80 that are quiet, that aren't raising their hands because they're scared. They don't know what to do. They think that people are going to laugh at them, that they have a coach. But then when they start to shift and you see changes in their life and people are like, who is this kid? And parents are saying how wonderful they are. And then they start to see, like, why didn't I do this last year? And that's what's unbelievable to see in young people, because we see older people so resistant to coaching that they don't allow the younger person of themselves to have wanted to do this and understand that it would have been helpful for them.
Man, Jeff, we're about running out of time, and Sean's gonna have two questions for you here, but I got a quick one for you, man. Do you do virtual consultation, like coaching with online? Okay, my kids, my daughter's fourth grade, and my son is second grade, and they're about to head into the next grade. But when they're sixth grade, we're gonna book you, man, for sure. And I love to coach my kids; they're very coachable. Well, my son's very coachable. My daughter, she's getting there. She's really seen the value and what it is to listen, and actually, it's okay to hear something from someone else. But I want you to work with them. I'm pretty sure they're gonna be athletes. We play sports all the time. They're very athletic. So if they go that route, we're coming to see you, man, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's the thing, is just understanding in person's the best. We just know that to help as many people as we can, we just have to have a virtual route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Final questions, my friend. First question, how can our listeners and audience support you, man? Where can they follow you? Where can they find you?
I am most active on Instagram, and that's, you can follow me at Jeff and then the number 4 Esther. So my name's Jeff Forrester. So it's Jeff Forrester. We also have highlight.coaching. That's on Instagram. They can find all of this information on our webpage, which is highlightcoaching.com, and they can get everything there. Reach out, message me. I like I said, very active. I'll respond to anything if there's questions, and then however I can provide value, I want to do it.
Fantastic. And we'll also put the links in the show notes too. I think you shared it with Lindsay, so we'll put that in the show notes for easy access. Second question, what does level up and live mean to you, Jeff?
Well, for me, it's being intentional. It's just taking action on the things that we learn about. And when you take action and you fall in love with the process over the outcome, that's living. And it's just the art of being happy with just putting in the work. And that's work, whether or not it's spiritually, if it's with your family, if it's financially, if it's physically, all of those things, that the work is where the glory's at.
Love that, man.
Beautiful, man. Well, we appreciate your time, energy, and effort today. It was so grateful to be able to connect with you. Thanks for saying yes. Thanks for being on the podcast and designating your time today. So I know our listeners and audience are going to receive the value. And I know I took a ton of notes. We're starting to take more notes. So yeah. I learned something new every time on this podcast, and I go back and listen to it. So we really appreciate you, Jeff. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah. Level up and live.
Level up and live.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Level Up and Live podcast. A huge thank you to our guest, Jeff Forrester, for sharing his insights and experiences on today's show. If you've enjoyed this episode and found value in Jeff's insights, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring conversations. And don't forget to leave us a review sharing what you liked about the episode. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners just like you. For additional free resources, check out our show notes from today's episode. Until next time, keep leveling up and living your best life.